I call the honourable member for Macquarie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Yet again, we've had patronising comments from the other side that somehow Labor members do not understand what it's like to be in the agricultural sector. Now, you've heard from someone who grew up on a dairy farm and lives in that area. You've heard from people in Tasmania where agriculture is part and parcel of how that economy works, and you're never very far from a farm in Tassie, or an oyster farm, of course, being my preferred option. But I think there's a real gap in understanding. These people opposite me seem to think they own a space. Well, I'm sorry, when you fail to act, you vacate the space, and that's what's been happening. Now, I'm not a farmer. I grew up in a city, but my dad grew up on a sheep farm, in fact, not far from here, in Yass, and his twin brother farmed that farm until his death. So like many city people, I'm feeling really fortunate to spend holidays on farms. But more than that, I was fortunate to be in the old Parliament House as the rural reporter for the 2UE network back in the 80s. Now, this was a time of great change in the sector when technology was really just starting to come through. And I was always very happy to spend time with the National Farmers Federation, hearing from them about what they needed the then Labor government to do, and those two worked hand in hand. So this nonsense that Labor somehow can't work with farmers, you go back to that government and you'll see great achievements and great collaboration. I was then very fortunate that throughout my professional career, when I had my own business for 25 years, much of that was spent working with rural organisations. And in fact, my very first client was the New South Wales Farmers Federation. So I have spent hours and days and weeks of my life thinking about the issues that face farmers, and that's before I became the member for Macquarie, in what is one of the key agricultural areas, peri-urban agriculture areas for New South Wales. So don't patronise us. How about you listen to the things that we see in our communities, and you might learn something that's useful, and we would love you to learn from our communities because they feel that they've been abandoned by you. Over the last 5 years as the member for Macquarie, I have really come to understand more deeply the unique environment that it is where you have peri-urban agriculture. You know, I have prize cattle breeders, and of course they're showcased at the Hawkesbury Show, which is the biggest agricultural show in New South Wales outside the Sydney show. I've got the uni students who are hoping to take over their families' farms. I've got people who've farmed the land all their life, like John from Enniskillen Orchard, who has fought to protect peri-urban agriculture for decades and decades. I've got the incredible Hawkesbury Harvest, who promote the pick-your-own agri-tourism side of the agricultural sector. I've got all the Maltese vegetable farmers who were so badly affected by the floods, and the newer arrivals, the Asian market farmers and market growers. And then, of course, I've got the orchardists, the apples around Bilpin and the flower growers. Look, the list goes on and on. And what it shows you is that in a relatively small space, you can have a bit of everything. If you're a Hawkesbury farmer, or for that matter, a Blue Mountains farmer, you've been through a lot. You've been through drought, you've been through bushfires, you've been through floods that have washed away your crops, and you're still probably looking at great big holes in the riverbank where you used to grow things. And that applies to the turf farmers as well. But and they've trusted government, you know, they've trusted government to do the right thing by them, and they haven't seen that happen. And that's the danger with biosecurity. The failure, they're trusting that you will act on that, yet the research, the analysis that comes out is from the Inspector General is that the system is not in a strong position to address the diverse and evolving biosecurity risks and the business environment expected in the next few years. You cannot sit back and do nothing, let alone take no action on climate change, which is going to exacerbate those things. Now is the time to act for the sake of our farmers.
I call the